Hi, I'm Luke Johnson, and today I'll be doing a book review of J. Heywood-Thomas's Subjectivity and Paradox, a study of Kierkegaard. Prior to the debut of Thomas's specialized study, the English-speaking world had only 10 to 25 years to wrestle with Kierkegaard's general thought and primary works. Sensing the time for Kierkegaardian surveys as over, Thomas organizes his discussion of Kierkegaard largely around the question of philosophy's relation to Christianity and two Kierkegaardian themes. The first, the subjectivity of truth, and the second, the absolute paradox. Both Collins and McInerney note that Thomas innovates by frequently employing the linguistic analysis he gleaned from the Cambridge Annalists. Over the course of 6 chapters, it emerges that Thomas has 2 essential theses. Thesis A, Kierkegaard's principle of subjectivity and the absolute paradox were not born out of a vacuum. Rather, they were the culmination of an intellectually rich climate within which Kierkegaard found himself. And Thesis B, renewed emphasis needs to be placed on Kierkegaard's ideas of subjectivity and paradox for at least 2 reasons. The first, so that modern philosophy of religion does not continue on a fool's errand for an objective proof of faith. And 2, conceiving of faith as a matter of abstraction or proof shifts our attention away from the personal existential states involved both in philosophy and our decisions for religious truths. In his introduction, Thomas reveals the thinkers that likely influenced Kierkegaard and sketches the contours of the principle of subjectivity. We see here the kernel of Kierkegaard's new subjective approach to philosophy of religion. Thomas develops these ideas in full in subsequent chapters. Thomas's second chapter, The Historical Situation, details the evolution of Hegel's theological views for 2 reasons. First, to demonstrate how Hegel was a Kierkegaardian forerunner, and second, to show why Kierkegaard was justified in his critique of Hegel. Hegel's nascent theological view resembled the Kantian idea of religion. However, Hegel, over time, couldn't square Slavish moral religion with the purported restoring unity of Christianity symbolized in the Incarnation. In the spirit of Christianity, Hegel developed his concept of Geist to unite both God and man. Philosophy has to create a new religion to reconcile faith and speculation. Christ was but one instance of God's incarnation. Every man is an instantiation of God, and the skilled philosopher can integrate the seeming disparate events of history and religion to see how God expresses himself temporally through humanity. Via speculation, the philosopher can come to understand God and harmonize accordingly. Thomas reserves chapter 3 for the influences that helped distance Kierkegaard from Hegel and ultimately precipitate the principle of subjectivity, specifically Franz von Baader, Schelling, Hamann, and Lessing. This overview of the principle of subjectivity's development could prove a bit dizzying for the uninitiated. Baader is credited with initiating the struggle against Hegel for Kierkegaard with his non-endorsement of the idea that God is an object of man's reason. One can see how Kierkegaard may have derived his idea from Baader that God is the infinite subject, known only in subjectivity, not speculation. Schelling can also be seen as a source of inspiration for the principle of subjectivity, given how Schelling emphasized a real relation to God contra the abstract theorizing of the Hegelian milieu, choice and positive freedom. Kierkegaard was likely attracted to the following 3 ideas from Hamann. 1, that faith is non-demonstrable via intellectual reflection, rather it is an immediate awareness, not unlike the faculty of sight. 2, the value of philosophy then is reduced to discrediting scientific hypotheses. And 3, faith, since it is not an operation of reason, is immune to philosophy's discrediting endeavors. Lastly, Kierkegaard credits Lessing for emphasizing the idea of subjective appropriation. The totality of these influences led Kierkegaard to the position that the person must be reintroduced to philosophy, meaning they have to subjectively relate with passion to a religious truth against a backdrop of uncertainty regarding the non-demonstrable truths of religion. The certainty sought for via intellection is then found in this act of faith. To drive home Kierkegaard's point that faith has nothing to do with reason's promise of logical or factual demonstrability, Thomas goes over Kierkegaard's dissatisfaction with the traditional proofs for the existence of God in chapter 4. In general, Thomas does an excellent job explaining Kierkegaard's frustration with the inadequacy of the proofs. However, Thomas gets distracted with a long logico-mathematical discussion of the ontological argument that does not serve the book's larger aims. Further, McInerney disapproves of Thomas's long-winded and confusing analysis of an already confused footnote. To fully understand subjectivity, Thomas, in Chapter 5, shows the role of the absolute paradox in Kierkegaard's writings. Narrowly defined, the absolute paradox is the God-man, a contradiction. One can only accept it in faith or be offended at the proposition. The absolute paradox makes it the case that faith cannot be equated with philosophical comprehension, contra Hegel, thus signaling a new and non-speculative life in faith. Once in faith, the meaning of the paradox is revealed and no longer appears absurd. Thomas concludes with a return to his second primary thesis. Kierkegaard's relevance to present-day philosophy of religion debates consists in his views. 1, that faith is unlike any kind of proof, be it legal, scientific, or mathematical. And 2, philosophy of religion can no longer be an entirely objective enterprise. Thus, it must take into consideration the emotional attitudes of the individual relating to religious truth. For instance, the despair brought on by sin and guilt nudges us towards living a life of Christian faith. Thomas is especially adept at intellectually contextualizing Kierkegaard's authorship and tamping down the mad rush to apply science to religion. The distinguishing motif of Thomas's work has to be the employment of linguistic analysis to existential religious philosophy. This is an unusual pairing that has produced mixed reviews. McInerney fails to see the relevance of Thomas's technique. Though amused by it, McInerney does not understand how Kierkegaardian linguistic analysis is justified outside of curiosity. Collins is more complimentary of the notion, specifically in regards to the demonstration of how religious statements are meaningful. This author tends to side with McInerney, in that linguistic analysis makes an already difficult thinker more confounding with no obvious intellectual payoff. However, if this methodology formalizes Kierkegaard, so he is taken more seriously by analytic philosophers, then we can hardly fault Thomas for that. Okay, my name is Luke Johnson. I'm an individualized humanities instructor here in the Northern Virginia area. I'm building an online educational platform, and that's why I make these sometimes janky videos. If you would like to receive personal instruction from me, call me at 703-727-2184 or email me at philosophyluke@gmail.com and subscribe to my YouTube channel. We can meet indoors, so I'm not fighting off bugs. And yeah, okay, have a wonderful day.